Welcome to My Big Story with Christopher Swan, the weekly show where I talk with amazing people about their story. A story that includes creating a life that they love, living a life of intention, and where we can learn from their stories. This week, we're doing things a little differently. Instead of a new guest on the show, you get me and 3 past guests. I decided I wanted to revisit a few conversations that I really enjoyed. This isn't a greatest hits or moment sort of thing. Instead, I wanted to share a few conversations that include advice I love and stories that bring it all to life. It's also a great way to hear something from a past episode you may have missed. Here's the truth. This is an experiment. It seems like a good idea, but we'll see. If you love it, let me know. Or even if you have suggestions, tell me that too. I mean, if you hate it, maybe not send me a message. But all my contact information is in the show notes. About the conversation, I'm going to set up each one with a little context about the guest, why this specific conversation, and so on. That way, it's easy to jump straight into the excerpt. The guests included in this episode are Pat Waters, Chief HR Officer for LinkedIn, Natalie Patterson, a poet, teaching artist, and president of the nonprofit Sister Support, and Deborah Dalton, Executive Director of the Sonoma County-based nonprofit Mentor Me. I absolutely love these conversations, and I handpicked each one of them to include them here. I think you'll find some great nuggets of goodness in them too. Okay, let's do this. In this first conversation, I'm chatting with Pat Waters. Professionally, she's the Chief HR Officer for LinkedIn. She's also a wife, a mother of 3, and a proud introvert. That last part is actually something Pat talks a lot about, and she brings new insights to the conversation of bridging introverts and extroverts. It's actually really fascinating if you dive into that world. So before I tell you about the conversation, here's a little behind the scenes details. I was no stranger to Pat when we had this chat or when she was on the podcast. I've known her for a while now. We worked closely together for a few years back actually at LinkedIn. And it's obvious that she made a lasting impression on me because to this day, I still use some of Pat's phrases in my own work. Literally, somebody just called me out on it the other day. Not a bad thing though. Okay, now for this conversation. The conversation of our interview I'm calling coming out with who you are. Well, Pat actually said that. In fact, she talks about it, or rather, being authentic and why it matters. This isn't the authentic jargon that we hear so much about online. It's more about the understanding how you show up and how others can perceive it. Pat tells a story where she realized there was a problem with a group of employees. The problem was they didn't like her. It gets deeper than that, but I don't want to share the details to you here. I'm just going to let Pat tell that story. And in that story, she opens up about being an introvert, finding a coach to help see the blind spots that she might be missing, and how she realized being real was the best way to connect with people. Here's Pat Waters about being real and open.
Oddly enough, it's coming out with who you are, right? Being authentic as a human being, as a leader, being vulnerable was the accelerator. So you can be a subject matter expert. You can read your textbook. You can be the expert in accounting or how to close a deal. But if you're not authentic with who you are, the chances of people trusting, following, taking more risks with you on behalf of your words are reduced significantly. And before I had shared with the world, with my coworkers and my partners, that I was an introvert, that I'm raising young kids, and my husband, quit his day job, so to speak, and dedicated his job to raising our kids and running the household to let me fly. I would much rather help my family and be with them than grab a beer with coworkers. As an introvert, I didn't wake up in the morning and go, "How was your weekend?" and have social conversation because I'm in my head processing. At lunch, I don't eat with you because I'm at my desk recharging. By myself for 30 minutes. Just give me 30 minutes and I'll give you my best energy in the afternoon. but I never told anyone why. And so in absence of me declaring who I was as a human, people can assume the worst, especially if you have influence over them.
Gosh, so true.
And so I one day got a coach and I said, I'm working on this major project and it requires me to travel quite a bit. My kids are all in diapers. I'm stressing that if I don't get this work done, I have to stay gone longer from my family. That's a big goal for me. And I feel these 10 people not liking me so much. I got 20 that like me and 10 that don't. The common element is me. Christopher, it was me. Something was wrong with me.
I love that you were actually able to own that too.
Yeah, it was me because these 20 people didn't all sit together. So if they all did, I'd say, "Oh, it's them."
It's clearly the water.
It's them. It's them. But they didn't sit together. I find anything common but me. It was like, whoa, that's ugly.
But to even face that, to say, "Okay, I get it. Now, what can I do to change that?"
Yeah. So I got a coach, and I said, "Help me figure this out, do a 360. And my coach was like, well, then let's get people that like you and that don't, and these people that report to you. I'm like, no, just these 10. I've pissed them off, making my life harder, something happened, and I don't know what I did. And in the feedback, she came back to me and she said, they don't know who you are. They think that you're a ladder climber, you're self-motivated, you're out, for glory, you don't appreciate them, they invite you to social hours, you never show, you avoid them at lunch, you don't ask about their weekend. So in my head, I am like, well, of course not, because of these things.
Sure.
And as she's talking about how horrible I sound, I started to cry and blamed it on the salsa because we're in a Mexican restaurant. And she goes, all right, so we're going to have to fix this problem. Let's pick one or two and fix the relationship. And I paused and I said, I can't. She goes, well, if you want to be a leader, you're going to have to learn how to do this. And I said, I want to be a great one. I have to fix all 10 because what they don't know is who I am. I'm an introvert. I am anxious about my family. I am anxious about being there for them. I'd rather be there than a beer. I need my energy.
Yeah.
I care about them, but I don't know how to express it naturally. These are not things I do. And so she said, well, let's take 2 at a time, like 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, see how that goes. And so I scheduled all 10 one week. She was like, oh, you're a glutton for punishment.
Starting small.
Yeah, start small. And each one, I said, I thank you for the feedback. I did not mean to offend you and alienate you. I do appreciate what you do. I struggle with some of the quality that comes out in some of these areas. Maybe I haven't been as appreciative or as compassionate, and why I don't spend time when I am local is for these reasons. And they were all surprised. All 10 were surprised. Now, some of them gave me a really hard time, and I had to pay my penance, and I appreciated that. Some were very gracious, and they're like, I never knew. And I said, here's who I am as a human being. And it changed the entire dynamic, Christopher. Everything changed from that point on. So 6 of the 10 followed me in other jobs. It became more trusting. I became more conscious of what their needs are, not me. And I took that lesson with me to this day. So I come out with who I am every time I join a team, every time there's anything about me going on. I don't want you to assume. If I have a bad day and it's because of family, I'll tell you. If I'm sick, I'll tell you. So you don't think it's on your shoulders.
I absolutely can say I've seen that in action. Just working with you, like, absolutely. There was a lot of just authentic moments. Here's what's happening. And it made a giant difference because we were able to understand that, this is what I can deliver. This is how I can show up as well, or what I can do.
That's why I do it.
Yeah. And the following conversation is Pat again. This time, we talk about using intent to stay true to her purpose. The conversation goes further than that. Pat shares a story of new opportunity that manifested by following the intent and purpose she talked about. She explains with the year of saying yes, something I've heard from a few guests actually. The story acts as an example, but we also can hear Pat talk about her taking action, a key to making intent truly work. Now, I need to get a hold of that intention document now that I think about it, so maybe by the time this airs, I'll have it. I'll let you know. Here's our conversation.
I try to do an annual intention document.
Really?
Yeah. I try to visualize.
I didn't know that.
Many people don't.
I love that. And I love what you called intention. One of my favorite words.
And so I want to be intentional in my life. And what I realized is that my introversion held me back from a bigger impact, realization of what I could be and could offer the world. And so with intention, I decided to say yes and take more risks. So I only started blogging 2 years ago. My first piece was just 2 years ago. My speaking publicly just started happening about 2 years ago.
I remember this.
And since then, I've just been taking more and more risks to say yes, to be in conversations, to seek to understand, to throw out an idea and see what happens and be provocative in my thinking and see how the world responds. And Chris, every time I've said yes, it's been a gift. Scary.
Right, like what we talked about earlier, right? Fear gets in the way, but you'll regret it if you don't do it.
Yes. So it's been scary, but with intentionality, like this 2016 is the power of yes. And so with that powerful commitment, I've been saying yes to a lot more engagements and conversations with strangers. And I call them strangers because as an introvert, stranger danger. It's like, oh no, small talk and it's non-structured, but if it's structured, I'm good. And it's like, how do I go out there and my hands are sweaty? And but it's been fascinating, the relationships I've built.
I would imagine too that we know this intellectually even before we say yes or before we do that thing that but to see it come into action when you say yes and you do something, that does open other opportunities that you would have not seen before or been able to take advantage of. So I think that becomes part of that gift as well, not just that relationship, but also we're allowing ourselves to explore more and to find the possibilities.
Yeah, it's also great forcing function. So I was asked recently to speak at a professional business women's conference in March. And I'm like, yes. And in my head, it's like 200-300 women, and it's a panel for diversity and inclusion. As an introvert, you can hide on a panel, believe it or not. And
actually, I do know this. I've been on those.
Yeah, I like those. And so, you don't need to have a script. I love that. And so they asked me to do a 7-minute TEDx talk to lead up to the conversation. That scared me. But I already said yes, right? So now I'm like, how do I make this happen?
Yeah.
And the question was, how do you feel about D&I? And that rocked my world. And so these moments of yes are catalytic moments for me to pause and think about how I feel, why does it matter, what's the gift I want to leave behind, and see how that plays out. And so in this case, I thought about D&I deeply and personally for the first time as a female, as someone with a learning disability, with a parent of a disabled child. Like, how do I show up authentically, and where have I belonged and not belonged? And it became this belonging moment conversation in my head. And on the way into work, I coined it DIBS, diversity, inclusion, belonging. So I'm calling dibs on diversity.
I saw that recently and I didn't understand what it meant. I'm like, dibs. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Now you know.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
And so in the Urban Dictionary, I'm driving to work going, I hope I'm not cursing somebody out. So I look up in dictionaries. And so Urban Dictionary, as you know, is gospel.
Yes.
It's such the fact-based dictionary. It says it's the most powerful force in the universe to call to oneself. And I thought, how appropriate. And I think belonging moments and creating those opportunities to really introduce the full person and recognize who they are, not what they do, to be human in curiosity and respect. Like, what is it like to be Black, you know, in this world today in technology? How can I help you? You know, what offends you? What doesn't offend you? Is it African American or is it Black? Is it Latino or Mexican? And why does it matter? And help me understand to be great in your presence. That's a gift.
Yeah.
And you don't have to wait for a CHRO or the CEO to make a culture of that. You can give it to each other. And so that opportunity of yes ended up being 5,000 women, by the way, freaked me out.
How did you go from 2 to 300 to 5,000?
Because I never asked the question, who's the audience?
You just assumed?
Yes.
Oh, it's just a living room full of people.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I'll just say yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little boom, big moment. And so I launched DIBS. And so now I've been researching belonging because of yes. And what I've discovered from Professor Walden at Stanford and Dr. Brene Brown, in terms of vulnerability, and Susan Cain and introversion, is that it's wired in our genetics to belong. In our personality trait, it's for society, how you survive and thrive.
Sure.
And with this transient workforce now, being more intentional with how you belong and be more accepting in how you belong can unleash your superpower. So now I'm all about that.
We're now headed over to my conversation with poet and teaching artist Natalie Patterson. I'm just going to say it, Natalie is brilliant. Here's why. She has a unique ability to help people connect to experiences and life through her art and conversation. She says things that help me and others think about the why, about questioning standards that are already set for us and not accepting the status quo. She talks about meaningful topics throughout the spectrum of bias and equality, both something I'm very passionate about. Natalie also leads Sister Support, a nonprofit based in LA, committed to the advancement of women through community, connection, and sisterhood. And this work is really an extension of her art. It's all connected. In this excerpt from our interview, we talk about the phrase, "I get to do this." When she said it to me, it literally changed my thinking. I hear good stuff from people I meet all the time, so much of it is great, and I love hearing it. But this phrase, it struck a chord and it really stuck with me. It's about understanding and living our experiences and seeing them as a gift. That's so powerful if you really do that. Natalie will explain the phrase and how it works in our conversation. So after you listen to it, I'd really love to know if you resonate with that idea and that phrase too. Seriously, let me know, and let me know how you might use it in your life. Can you tell I love it? So let me know. Here's our conversation.
You have to look for it. It is everywhere. You are not looking. Sometimes we're looking down, like metaphorically, our posture is down. Well, honey, you can't see the sky looking down. Like chin up, like get up and go out into the world and find an adventure, find someone to help, be of service. Like to me, I always know, the thing I always do if I'm starting to feel depressed or like starting to feel down or like, depressed might be a little bit strong, but, if I'm just like not feeling like myself, I go take a walk. Because I know I'm going to see something in this world that is going to move me. I'm going to see someone who's in a worse position than me and be like, let me count these blessings, honey, because I have a place to live. I'm not living on the street. Like just inherently those kind of things. You realize I have a car that I get to drive. The thing I've started doing now is I say what I get to do. Like, I get to do this. I met this woman a couple weeks ago and she was like, yeah, we get to do this work and blah, blah, blah. And she was talking about eating disorder, like helping people with eating disorders. And she was like, I get to do this work. And I was thinking, you just listen to people's problems all day. And you're looking at that like it's a privilege.
Absolutely. I never thought of it that way.
And I literally was like, if I just start saying I get to do this, everything seems like a gift. And if everything seemed like a gift, I would cherish it.
Yeah.
And the way I would walk in it would be different. And so now I'm thinking about my life and the things that I'm doing, even things I don't necessarily want to do. I'm trying to find the silver lining and go, I get to do this. Like even last night with this show that I was not pleased with the way that it was produced. I was like, I get to show up for this woman and celebrate her, regardless of what anybody else is doing in the room. I get to share this poem I wrote for her with her.
I think that's one of my favorite things that you shared today. I'm Mr. Silver Lining. I'm glasses always half full.
Yeah.
But that's different than what you just described. It's different. It's the I get to do this that's powerful.
And it's a privilege, like really.
That's what it means.
This is a privilege. Like every moment we get, even when it's awful.
Yeah.
There were people that died this morning. They do not get to do anything else.
Yeah.
And even our suffering becomes a privilege sometimes when you think of it juxtaposed to dying. Like, it's like, I think about, I've been thinking about body image a lot recently. I was dating someone who I perceived to have an eating disorder, and I realized why that wouldn't work for me was because it made me self-conscious about something I am not self-conscious about. I get to have this body, whatever it looks like today. I have a body that fully functions. That if any part of my body did not work, that would be a different life situation for me. And so like, I get to wear this body. So shouldn't I represent it the best way I can? So yes, honey, I probably have a crop top on this summer. You know what I mean? Like, I'm probably going to live differently if I think of it like a gift.
Sure.
And so that's really what I invite people to do is get to do something.
In another excerpt from my interview with Natalie, she explains why she's drawn to poetry and how it can change the world. Well, that last part's probably my words, but it's true. I wanted to share this one because it holds a great idea about creating unexpected connections. And when that happens, we really learn. Here's Natalie again with her poetry, connections, and stories.
The reason I'm drawn to poetry is because it's a bridge, right? So there's so many things in life that are so hard to articulate. Like the feeling and the moment you realize that someone is dead and they're never coming back. Right? That's like that exact moment, that like missing and that longing and that like slight regret or like things that you didn't even realize you were going to miss that you now suddenly are like, I'm never going to taste this thing they made again because no one in the whole world can make this thing. And so I think what poetry offers is a moment to slow down, a moment to feel fully, and to like sink into a moment, to really think about what wind feels like on your skin. Like we typically are moving so quickly that we don't get that opportunity, but poetry really provides that. And I think specifically in these kind of in trying times, that is so necessary because if you're not going to therapy, you need some way to be able to decompress and to like sit with how you feel. And so for me, poetry is exactly that. When I hear someone describe something that I never thought to describe, but was exactly the thing, like exactly the words that I would have never come up with, that's the potential of poetry to me. It's the connecting of hard to describe things in language.
And what do you think the results are from that? What will that do for somebody?
Well, here's the thing. Like I write poems about my little self with my little feelings and like whatever. And then like last night I was doing an event and I read a poem about birthing a child, but about birthing, the poem is called Push, and it's about the process of birthing something, right? So I use that as the metaphor to talk about what needs to happen in America. Like we need to push harder to birth what is coming next. And so I thought I was talking about a female experience of like birthing a child. Like that is something women who have had children can relate to. And this like 6'5" man walks up to me at the end and he says, I just have to tell you, I was listening to your poetry and I started weeping.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, thank you. Because like he was not in my perspective when I was writing this poem. I was thinking about women and myself. And then this 6'5" man walks up talking about he's weeping and had to go to the bathroom to gather himself because he didn't understand that this is how he would feel. So I think that that's the opportunity that's afforded is like, we can cleanse and become, purified again and start over and connect to things we didn't know we were connected to.
Yeah, that's the key there that I even just heard. And I wonder if he even understood why he was feeling that way, like what it really connected to, or maybe, it's a personal connection or something. He sees the world differently. And that's how I think poetry can also open our eyes. It resonates. And I love that you talked about, like just your little feelings from your little self, but you're not the only one with them. It happens to be your world, but I bet there are like
thousands of us that probably had the very same experience.
And that's the thing for me is I get to see, like, I am a Black girl from Indiana, from a really small town in Indiana, and I say things in rooms of people that I do not think can relate. Like, I'm a plus size Black girl, right? And so there's a lot of rooms that no one else like me is in that room. And somehow people will connect in ways that I can't even completely fathom.
Yeah.
But, you know, after doing this for almost 15 years, obviously I can understand those connections a little bit better. But when I see those kind of magical moments where I'm like, this girl should not even care about what I'm saying, and she's over here crying. You know, like I do a poem about being fat, and a super skinny girl walks up to me crying, and she's like, "Oh my God," and I'm like, "How?"
Yeah.
And it's like, like my job is not to know how. My job is to do it. Is just to do my job, and all the other stuff is just magic that comes along with my job, and that's the awesome part.
Now, meet Deborah Dalton. She's the executive director of Mentor Me, a nonprofit that empowers youth in need by matching them with an adult mentor. I kind of think of this as helping kids achieve more and keeping them from falling through the cracks. Also, Mentor Me is in my town, in the Sonoma County wine country. If you're a regular listener to my show, you have probably caught on that it's important for me to share great stories from my community as well as all over the world. And Deborah didn't disappoint. She has a wonderful story and has such tangible advice and relevant stories. In this conversation, Deborah and I talk about finding balance in life. Now, I've asked a lot of people about how they find balance. The truth is, it's tough, and we may never have it right all of the time. But really, that's okay, really. But Deborah has a new spin on it, and it made a lot of sense to me. She makes two main points in this chat. I especially love the second one, as it made me think differently about my time away from work. It sparked an idea that I need to shift my permission and or my view of how I spend my time. I know I'm not doing this justice, but you'll see. So listen to this conversation and you'll see exactly what I mean.
There was a really huge epiphany that started happening when I started working with a therapist / coach about 18 months, 2 years ago. And, you know, a lot of times when we try to work toward balance, we always talk about it feels like adding things, right? Well, yes, of course, exercise. I need to exercise more, and I want to do meditation, and I want to, you know, do all of these things. But okay, that's like one more appointment on my calendar and one more thing I got to remember to do and all that stuff. So I really, you know, those are always on the docket, and those are always on the New Year's resolutions, and those are always, yes, another hour in your life that you're trying to fulfill in order to give back to yourself, right? But, you know, in order to do it, it's like dark and cold and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't feel like giving back, but you can check the box that I exercised today, right?
Could we relabel that torture?
Yeah, right. Just torture, morning, right? Yeah. Exactly. So, but I had this amazing thing, which was, I needed to not do more. It was about the energy that I was spending and using in all of my relationships. And the amount of energy that I was using in all of my relationships was energy that I could not afford. And that wasn't accomplishing what I thought it was accomplishing. So when I realized that what this genius woman was actually asking me to do was less, it took me a while to figure out what that meant. So for instance, I am always trying to like get in and mediate and manage people's relationships. I want to help them communicate with one another. I want to help their relationship, right? It takes a lot of energy. You have to talk with this. Well, what she really means is this. And well, what he's trying to say to you to this. And well, maybe if you do this. And then we get them in the room and then they're talking, right? And they're thrilled and they walk away. And I'm absolutely a wet noodle, totally exhausted. Okay, boy, good. I just did my job, right? I am so helpful. Yay, me. Good job, Deb. Okay. And then in a very gentle way, this woman helped me to see that I was actually in the middle of them, preventing them from knowing how to be in relationship with one another. on their own. Because what am I going to do? I'm going to walk through their lives with them together. And every time they have a fight, I'm like, hey, now, they're going to call me and then I'm going to help them work it out in the market. No, I'm actually in the way. I was not helping at all. I was not helping them and I was not helping me. Now, I may have taught them some good communication tools. I don't want to, beat myself up. I'm quite sure I helped in some way.
Sure, you offered
It was
something.
just not the way that I imagined it. And I was exhausted and had nothing left for myself. So, of course, I can't exercise and do anything for me. I'm wiped out. And I was not helping. So I started looking at, and of course, it's all about boundaries or lack of boundaries, right? So I started looking at and really evaluating ways that I was expending energy in ways that I thought was helping, that was not actually helping. It was just a lot of energy. And pulling out and watching what was happening in those relationships. It's very hard in the beginning because you sort of panic and but what'll happen if I don't?
Right, kind of the fixer, the solver.
Yes, absolutely. Now, ironically, I have this conversation and train mentors all the time to not do this. You are not the fix-it person. Do not make a to-do list of how to fix this person's life. And yet, in my personal life in particular, I was absolutely creating a very long to-do and fix-it list. And I was absolutely in the way of my family's relationships in a helping way, right?
Sure.
So the pulling back was like this energy management where I suddenly had more energy. So the second part of that epiphany is A, get out of other people's relationships, manage your own energy. You are not actually helping. And then when I had more energy, I was able to then look at some of the things that I wanted to do, exercise more, start a meditation practice, read more for pleasure. And to start to add some of those back in and see what kind of energy they also gave back to me. And start to look at those as like, actually, those are a necessity. Those aren't a luxury. Because when I'm out running, for instance, that's when I have all my good ideas for work. And that's when I work out a lot of things in my mind. That's where I come up with my ideas. So actually, that is part of my job. And if I don't get out and think that way and have those ideas, I'm not doing my job.
Did that take you a while to realize that aspect?
100 years.
Because it's, we can sit here and as people that are listening to this, like, oh, of course. But you had to put it in practice to really understand it.
I actually needed permission. So a couple
I just talked about this with somebody. That's amazing.
No, I did. I needed permission. At a leadership retreat, I cannot say enough how all leaders should go be with other leaders. The wisest women, my women's leadership group, the Sonoma Community Foundation of Sonoma County put together this group of nonprofit leaders, and we all get together on retreat. And it's one of the most valuable peer groups I have. And a couple of these wise women formally gave me permission to exercise during my work hours. Don't try to do it at 5:30 in the morning. Because I am working. Part of my job is visioning and thinking. And I do that best when I'm exercising. So why is it not okay to do that?
It's funny too, when you said it, I actually visualized it. So I tend to end up hiking all over the hills around here, or sometimes just walk through like Schellenberger Park. And that's where I get up all my ideas. And I think of it as I'm taking a break, where in fact I'm not.
You're working.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought, oh, I'm working. So I'm smarter than I thought I was.
Yeah.
Thanks to Deb.
Yeah, right? You're welcome.
I don't need that 100 years.
Did I actually help you right then?
Yeah, absolutely.
In this last conversation, Deborah talks about leadership and professional and personal growth. She explains it through her experiences with an honest reveal of learning her way through leadership and her role. A great takeaway here is if you feel like you don't know what you're doing in your job or you're just frustrated, maybe you need to pause. Then reflect and really get into the part that's annoying you the most. Because when you do, you'll push your learning further. Okay, here's our conversation.
I didn't really go through the executive director training program. You just sort of start. And, I have this you can't tell me what to do gene that sort of runs into my defiant personality disorder. And so, I really couldn't be trained by Val, who we love each other to pieces, but she could not train me any more than, I could train her. I mean, we were the same type. So
Cut
she's just like,
cloth.
let me know if you need me. And I'm like, go away. I'll call you if I need you. Right. So what I thought I was supposed to do was think of all the ideas for the organization. And then I was supposed to anticipate all of the roadblocks and problems that would be in the way of those ideas. And then I was supposed to come up with 3 or 4 solutions to those. And then I was supposed to present all that to the board, but not until I had met with them all on the side to make sure that they all agreed with my ideas. And then once they said yes, then I was supposed to delegate and implement all the things that I had thought of. So then I wondered why I was completely exhausted and fried at about year 3. And thinking, I don't have what it takes to take this organization to the next level. Yes, we had done a lot. We had done bylaws and a new logo. We had moved our offices to a small space on Keller Street. We'd done a lot, but I didn't know if I was done. I was fried. And then I had this epiphany that, wait a second, that is what your board is for. Yes, it's nice that I have a vision. And it's nice if I have a couple of ideas about what might go wrong. And it's nice if I have a couple of ideas about how to solve those problems. That's called being a professional. But what I was doing was insanity and probably parasuicidal. It really is not a good idea. So once I learned to work better with the board, I read a lot. I got some consultation about board executive director relationships. We did staff development. I read a lot on leadership and management. I read all the time into the hours of the morning.
Was that exciting for you to do that? Like, was it a kind of a building, doing something in a new way, or was it just a whole new world and we'll figure it out?
Not exciting, really. Humbling. Like blood, sweat, and tears, like making yourself read the manual to the new car, like that. I really wish that I could say, oh yes, it was so bloody exciting. I loved every minute of it. No, it irritated me that I didn't already know how to know this part, because this is a people part and this is the part I knew how to do.
Sure.
But I did not know how to do this.
That's actually really wonderful that you say it, though, that it was humbling and that you didn't know, because that's the tough spot is where we learn, right? Where we actually have to sit down and get in the middle of the work and expose ourselves and be vulnerable that we don't know all the answers.
Well, and I kept thinking that once I started saying the words, okay, I'm really breaking down on this part. I really don't know this part. I kept thinking that would be the part where I would get fired as the leader, or that's why I wasn't a good leader. And then it's really been in the last 18 months or so that I realized, I think the reason why I'm a good leader is because I'm able to stand in front and be good at what I'm good at, and then say, okay, now this part I'm really not good at, so the people who are good at it need to come up and stand next to me, like now. And I do love that freedom. And what it's done is it's gotten me out of this thinking of, I don't know how much longer I can do this job because it's really hard and I love it, but it's hard and I'm exhausted and I'm fried, to no, this is, now I'm learning pacing, longevity, sustainability, which is a perfect place for me to be in personally.
I was just going to ask, like, has that moved into a personal perspective?
Well, it moved into a personal perspective at the same time that's what the organization needs, is to, once we moved into the Kavanaugh Recreation Center, our 12,000 square foot bricks and mortar forever home, once we were here, I thought, okay, now we're done. There's not another big project. But no, the big project is actually really sustainability and expansion. And for that, I needed to also be understanding how one personally expands, grows, sustains, endures, it's really my personal path and my professional path and the path for the organization have all been eerily aligned. Maybe.
Is that hindsight that you realize that? Or yeah, like I can't imagine that it was one and the same as you were doing it, but it was more.
I think I'm just realizing it right now when I said it.
Really?
In a way, yes. Sure.
Oh, wow.
That's it for the episode, but hold on. Before you hit that stop button, here's a few more things you may not know about. Did you know I share other amazing stories, ideas, and creative spotlights each week? It's all to spark your imagination and power creativity. Just go to awesomefinds.info. That's AWESOMEFINDS.info to find out more and sign up. And it's, of course, all free. If you want original weekly articles that help you follow your passion, find your purpose, or to learn from other amazing people, check out the articles at accidentalinformation.com. If you want to share your feedback about this episode or the show, send us an email at info@accidentalinformation.com or call us at 1-707-347-9312. You can follow along with me and see behind the scenes of the show and my adventures. So come find me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher. That's MECHRISTOPHER. You can also follow along with Accidental Information on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Information or on Twitter at Accidental Info. Lastly, if you love the show and want to help me out, I'd love it if you told a friend about the show. As in literally text someone or email it to them. I cannot tell you how awesome that would be. Also, writing a review for the show wherever you listen to podcasts helps in a really big way too. Thanks to everyone listening and joining me in my story. We'll talk again next week when we hear from another big, inspiring story.